You feel it before you can explain it. A sound behind you in a parking lot. A shadow moving at the edge of your vision. Your heart is already hammering before your mind has even finished forming the thought. You didn't decide to be afraid. Something older than your conscious mind made that call for you. And here's what's strange. You live in a world with almost no predators. The last time a human being in a modern city was stalked and killed by an animal was so rare it made international news. And yet your nervous system behaves as if a big cat is crouched behind every parked car. Your body is still running ancient software on modern hardware. And the gap between those two things is where almost every form of human anxiety lives. This is not a glitch. It was the most important feature your ancestors ever evolved. To understand why your brain works this way, you have to go back. Way back. Not to ancient Rome or medieval Europe. Back to a time before fire was controlled, before language was complex, before there was any such thing as a city or a wall or a locked door. Back to the African savannah, 2 million years ago, where your ancestors were not at the top of the food chain. They were somewhere in the middle, small, slow, and extraordinarily vulnerable after dark. Anthropologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard has spent decades studying the mismatch between the bodies and brains our species evolved and the world we actually live in today. His research makes one thing viscerally clear. The human body was not designed for the present. It was designed for a past that was genuinely, relentlessly dangerous. Your ancestors were prey, not occasionally, constantly. Fossil records from sites like Swartkrans in South Africa show puncture marks on early hominid skulls that match the teeth of large cats, specifically leopards, which carried their kills into trees to protect them. Those skulls belonged to your relatives. The ones who survived were not the bravest. They were the most paranoid. Think about what that means for your brain today. Evolution does not care about your happiness. It does not care about your comfort or your productivity or how well you sleep. It cares about exactly one thing: survival long enough to reproduce. And the single most efficient strategy for surviving in a world full of things that want to eat you is to assume the worst about every ambiguous signal your senses pick up. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux called this the low road. When your brain detects something that might be a threat, a sound, a shape, a sudden movement, the signal doesn't travel the full route to your cortex where your rational thinking happens. It gets intercepted by a small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala does not wait for more information. It fires immediately. Your heart rate spikes. Your muscles flood with blood. Your pupils dilate. Your digestion shuts down. All of this happens in under a quarter of a second. Before you have had a single conscious thought, your body is already in full predator response mode. This is called the threat detection bias. And it is not broken. It saved your ancestors' lives thousands of times over. Here is how powerful that bias is. Researchers Arne Oman and Susan Manica, in a now famous study, showed participants images of snakes, spiders, and flowers mixed into a rapid visual sequence. Every person, regardless of whether they had a fear of snakes, detected the snake images significantly faster than the flowers. The brain has a dedicated fast lane for picking out evolutionarily ancient threats. You are not afraid of snakes because you learned to be afraid. You are afraid of snakes because the ancestors who weren't afraid died before they could pass on their genes. Your brain did not evolve for a world where the biggest danger on your commute is a delayed train. And this creates a very specific, very modern problem. Because the threat detection system in your brain cannot tell the difference between a leopard and an angry email from your boss. It processes social rejection the same way it processes physical danger. A presentation in front of your coworkers activates the same neural architecture that once prepared your ancestors to run for their lives. Being left out of a group conversation triggers a cascade of stress hormones that, in evolutionary terms, made complete sense. Exclusion from the tribe meant death. Psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University has studied this extensively. He calls it sociometer theory. Your sense of self-worth, the fluctuating feeling you have about whether you are valuable, accepted, and safe, is not a product of your ego. It is a survival gauge. It evolved to track your standing within the group, because your group was your only defense against the dark. When your brain makes you anxious about what people think of you, it is not being irrational. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is that it has no way to know that failure in a modern context is rarely fatal. There is another layer to this. Your predator detection system is always on. It never fully powers down. Not when you are sleeping, not when you are relaxed, not even when you are in the safest environment ever constructed in human history. Evolutionary biologist David Buss at the University of Texas has written about what he calls the ancestral shadow, the way ancient selection pressures continue to shape modern behavior even when those pressures no longer exist. You scan rooms when you enter them. You sit with your back to walls in restaurants. You feel uneasy on open hilltops where there is no cover. None of this is conscious. You just do it. Because the part of your brain doing it is not listening to your frontal lobe's reassurances. The rustling in the bushes could be the wind. Your ancestors who assumed it was just the wind are not here anymore. The ones who ran first and reason later survived. And you are what that survival looks like. So when the anxiety rises without explanation, when the dread pools in your chest for no reason you can name, when you lie awake at 3 in the morning convinced that something is wrong, even though nothing you can point to is wrong, understand what is actually happening. Your amygdala is doing its job. It is scanning for threats in the darkness the same way it has scanned for threats for 2 million years. It does not know that the darkness is just your bedroom. It does not know that you are safe. It only knows one thing. Something is out there. And the brain that kept your ancestors alive has decided, once again tonight, that it is better to be wrong 1,000 times than to be right once and not survive to tell about it. The parking lot is empty. The shadow is a tree branch. Your heart is already slowing down. But for just a moment, crouched in the dark behind your ribs, something ancient lifted its head and listened. And it saved your life one more time, even though you never needed saving at all.